is to say two big thank yous. The first one is a big thank you to everyone who is tuning in to this latest episode of the Simply Inspired podcast. This is episode 552. So thank you to everyone who has stuck by me for this long. But also, if you are tuning in for the first time, then I'm very, very excited to welcome to the show today Rachel Krentzman. Now, hopefully, I'm saying it the right way and I'm not murdering that name. That's good. That's good. So, internationally renowned yoga teacher, three-time author, and most recently has published her very, very inspirational spiritual memoirs, As Is. And this story, as you will hear very shortly in certain inspirational snippets or highlights, let's put it that way, because let's face it, if you want to know the real story, read the book, guys. It is a very, very good read. But today we will be hearing some of Rachel's story, the absolute incredible and inspirational transformation that she has been through to become the remarkable and inspirational lady that she is today, teaching yoga all around the world. Now, what I will say is that Rachel will have her own definitions for exactly what she does, why she does it. We will find out very, very shortly. But let's just say that this is a lady who makes a profound positive impact on the lives of a lot of people all around the world. And that is what is truly beautiful about her work. Not only physically helping people, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually helping them as well to heal and to become the best version of themselves. So I don't forget completely, because we are talking about Rachel's book, but my own book has recently been published as well, The Greatness Within, Live a Life Less Ordinary. So that's out there for anyone who needs inspiration, spiritual transformation, and hope to never give up. So feel free to get your copies there. But it's not about me, it's about Rachel. And with all of that being said, that was only the first thank you. And my second thank you, Rachel, is to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm very, very honored and grateful to be talking with you today. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Well, for me as well, for me as well. So, with when I do these, I don't usually move around in linear time, if you like, anyway. But in this case, we certainly won't, because we need to start with this year, 2025, when you have published your amazing memoirs, your journey of healing and transformation, as I mentioned at the beginning. And just to kick things off with something sort of to warm us up, I'm curious how it feels to see the most intimate or raw or personal sort of aspects of your life and your transformation actually out there in a physical form that people around the world can read and absorb. Because it's one thing to say, oh, well, she wrote a memoir, but what is that actually like to see your life physically there in print? May we start there, please, Rachel? Thank you.
Sure. I feel that this is the hardest part of writing a memoir, actually, and nobody's asked me that question. I'm very glad you did, because that's the hardest part, like I said. I love writing. I've wanted to write my story for a long time, and it's probably been in the works for 25 years or so. Actively, I've been working on the book for 10 years, and so much sweat and tears and exhaustion and joy and, all the feelings have come up during the writing of the book. But I didn't know what it would feel like to actually see my story in print and realize that anyone can pick it up and read it. And I didn't think about it when I was writing the book, and I was I was working with a coach, and he told me, don't worry about what people are going to think, just write from the heart. And that's what I did. And then we edited and worked on it a lot more. But when the book actually arrived at my house in boxes, and I opened it and saw it, I kind of put it away for 2 months. I wasn't ready to release it. I wasn't ready to have a book opening or an event, because it was scary. It was really scary to see my story in print out there. And even though I knew I was moving in that direction, it's a different thing when you actually see it and hold the book in your hands. And it's scary. It's a very scary feeling. So I sat on it and I waited until my birthday to actually said for my birthday I'm going to do an event, a party, and then kind of a reading and a class, yoga class, and a nice event for friends and people I know who would come and support me. And so I waited to launch it. I didn't open the books for a long time. So that just gives you a little hint or a little, peek into how it feels. And even these days when people say, oh, I read your memoir, I picked up your memoir, my first feeling is fear. What are they going to think of me now when they read my story? Does it change anything in how they feel about me? And that's the fear of really writing from the heart. It's that, people are going to see the deepest parts of you. On the page, it's easier to be very honest. And it's also terrifying at the same time to really show the world and strangers, and even more scary than that, people who know you. I think is more scary than strangers who know you in a certain light, and then all of a sudden they read your book and they see your intimate thoughts and stories from your life. It's a very strange feeling. Very strange.
I can imagine. I can imagine it is. But then again, it's so meaningful, the way that you shared this to contribute to other people in such a beautiful way. And before we get into the impact that the book is having, because I will talk about that. During the writing process, you mentioned there 10 years and this long period of time. And it sounded like, or the sort of gist or the idea I got from that was very much writing for yourself, for healing, for catharsis, for these kinds of things, not really writing something that's tailored of saying, well, people are going to read it in such and such period of time, but I'm writing this for me. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but did you ever plan to publish it at all, or was it just in the beginning for you, if that makes sense? So I would like to go deeper into the
Mm-hmm.
actual writing process, please, if we may.
Sure. Well, I used to write in journals for many, many years. So that's why I said for 25 or 30 years, I've probably been writing in journals, and I saved them all. And writing has always been a form of healing or therapy for me, or a place to put my feelings. And it's my preferred art form. Everyone has their way of expressing themselves. I've always liked writing since I was a kid. So I would write in journals. I never intended to publish anything from the journals. And then I got into publishing a couple of books that were more professional before I published my memoir. And that really gave me the confidence to write. So I hadn't thought about writing my memoir until I finished publishing my other two books. And in my other two books, I wrote a little bit of personal information. Very, very small amounts. It's very instructional. It's yoga for back pain mostly, and how to work with yoga for different spinal conditions. But I wrote a little bit about my story in it, and how emotions affect pain and something like that. And everyone that I asked who read the book, and a lot of people have read the book, and it's a textbook in some, yoga therapy schools and yoga trainings. Everyone who's read it has commented on the one or two paragraphs that I wrote that was personal, and not on all the other information that I gathered from all the years of study that I did. It was very interesting to me that people were touched by just a small bit of honesty, and that gave me a little bit of confidence. So once I published those two books, which took me a number of years as well, I thought, okay, what's the next project? There always has to be another project. And this was sort of sitting and burning inside me. I said, this is the book I really, really want to write. I just didn't have the courage to do it. But after going through the process of writing, working with a publisher, I said, okay, I think I can do this. And I don't know if I will end up publishing, but there was always the option. So I started working on it, and I started traveling and writing in coffee shops and setting aside time for writing, and just to see what would happen. And over the process of many years, that's when the 10 years started, after I finished publishing my book, which was 2015. And so then I just started to pull out my journals, read my journals, write about some stories that came up, and give myself time to see what comes up. And then once things came up and I wrote some stories, it started to take shape. And it took many different shapes before I found the story within the story. and the narrative that I wanted to tell. And even a year ago, I didn't know if I would publish it. At some point, I put it away and said, "Okay, let me think about it," because it was again too frightening to have it out, and I needed to talk to some family members and do some work on my own in terms of healing some relationships within my family. And anyway, at some point, there was just this calling that just said, "You got to do it. Just do it." You put all this time into it. There's something that will come of it. And I decided that even if it reached a few people and really really touched them and helped them and empower them to make the right decisions for themselves and follow their true calling and not to feel like a victim of their situation or their life, then it would be worth it. So I did it.
Wow, that is a beautiful insight into the creative process in general, actually, but specifically the creative process here. Now, in terms of that, as I mentioned earlier, Rachel, that is my next question really, is in terms of the impact that your book is having so far, because as you mentioned there, you've written it for your own healing, but also as a contribution to other people and to really touch and inspire them. So in terms of the feedback you've been having, or I suppose the question here in a nutshell, if you like, is how you are measuring that success or the feedback you're receiving in terms of the impact that the book is having in people's lives. And again, people often overlook this. People talk about the sales and it's, selling in this place and it's doing that. But, even with mine, the feedback that comes in of the impact that it has on people is what makes the whole process worthwhile. And that wasn't 10 years, that was three, I think about 2.5, 3 years. So for what you're doing with yours, all of those years of hard work to see it in fruition and to see it helping people, what kind of feedback are you getting in that sense from the book, please? If that makes sense.
I'm getting really good feedback and really interesting feedback, and what I find is that many people have shared with me that about their stories. So they said, "Wow, I read your book. I don't know how you had the courage to write it, but it really spoke to me." And it's what I think is that it's a story that really spans all races, all religions. I write about my upbringing, which was a strictly Jewish religious background. But many of my Catholic friends, say, "Oh, I went through exactly the same thing, and I'm noticing the patterns that I have or the effect that I had." And a lot of people have really come to me and said that it spoke to them, that they read it, they couldn't put it down, that they read it in a couple of days, and that it touched them and gave them hope. And so the personal feedback and hearing from my readers is really helpful to encourage me to keep going, because I'm not a famous writer. I mean, I'm famous in my field for, somewhat famous for yoga and physical therapy and working with back health, but I'm not known as a writer. So it's really hard to break into the industry and try to have a big impact in terms of numbers. But as long as I keep getting the feedback that it's touching people, that it's helping them have the courage to make bold decisions in their life, and I think it speaks to a lot of women as well who felt trapped in different situations and couldn't get out. It gives them a little bit of courage, and people feel less alone in their struggles, regardless of what it is. It doesn't have to be the same story, but it's really a process of, feeling like I was living a life that was not mine, and how to reclaim that authenticity and how to reclaim that and the struggle that comes along with that.
Absolutely. Now, funnily enough, Rachel, when you mention that, that's another topic I would like to touch on briefly because authenticity is definitely something that you embody and you represent as a human being, and you've grown into that process, obviously, hence the story. But the writing and putting your memoirs out there like this is a whole other level of authenticity. And what I'm getting at with this is there was obviously the search for authenticity of coming out of the Jewish life and everything and coming into yoga and these other practices. That's and all of the things that come with that. But there's also the authenticity of now you are out there in your most authentic self, as I mentioned earlier. Do you think that that specifically encourages people to cast off their um, external pressures, I guess, is the best. I'd like to go deeper into that topic because you mentioned there that it doesn't have to be the same as you. It can be any type of situation. But do you feel that not only your book, but what you represent as a person encourages people to be more authentic as a specific form of inspiration? If that makes sense?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm not sure because I don't know really what people do with even if they feel inspired, if they actually decide to make choices. But I do think that I hope that by me living my life the way I am and making the choices that feel right to me encourages other people to do the same. Not through what I tell them, but just through example. And to realize that it's not always easy, that people may not always accept you, family members, friends who have expectations. But in the end, you kind of go to bed with yourself every night and you need to feel okay in your own skin. And I think that's what I didn't feel for most of my life. I felt very much that I was living a lie, that I was doing everything to make other people happy, but I wasn't happy. And there was a price that I paid. It's not easy. And I don't encourage people to leave relationships or to leave religion. It's not about making those choices. It's just about finding a way to deal with the struggles of day-to-day life and finding a way to deal with all of the thoughts so that you come to a place where you make decisions from your heart, not from your head. And so I hope that it encourages people to do that, and it doesn't mean that they have to make huge life changes, but at least they can even begin to practice or even begin to meditate or take on some practices that cultivate more mindfulness in their life or more awareness, and their experience of life will change. Even if the outside doesn't change, the inside changes too.
Absolutely. Our conscious experience changes. It makes a lot of sense. I love that description. That's a very, very beautiful description. Okay, Rachel, one other question about this aspect, which kind of goes back to the creative process. Now, I hope this isn't sort of personal in a way, but it's relevant. And when I say that, it's just about your family members who are in the book. That's what I'm asking. But in other words, there's a layer of courage to publishing your story, as we've already discussed. But there's an added layer of courage to what you've done here. And I mean this is a compliment, by the way. But it's an interesting dynamic because then when you're writing about people, other people and things that have affected you from their behavior and, the different interplays that we all have with family and other people that we meet in life. How have you handled, or what was the process like of handling the dynamics with people who are still around, who are featured in there or mentioned in some way? Because that's a big part of the courage from from where I'm sitting, it looks like. So can we discuss that aspect, please?
Yeah, that was difficult as well. I would say that there are kind of different kinds of people that I wrote about that are in my life. Some are my good friends, and I write, very maybe loving or positive things. And then there are some more neutral characters, and then there are some characters that are not presented in the best way because my experiences with them were not positive. Especially my mother, and my father, who are kind of played a role in the difficulties that I experienced in childhood. And so what I did was I first wrote. I didn't ask anyone anything because I didn't write. I didn't want to censor anything as I was writing. So I didn't censor anything and I just wrote everything. And some things came out in a tone that might have been angry. Some things came out with some bitterness. And so there was a lot of work on editing, kind of going back to trying to keep the tone very objective and very much telling the story and less telling the people how to feel or the readers how to feel about the characters. Kind of let them make their own decisions about what people said, what people did, the messages that I got. So that was one layer of it. The second was really dealing with my family members, and I did speak to my siblings first. I'm very close with my siblings, and told them what I was doing and had them read the first draft. So I sent the first draft to my siblings, and some parts were a little difficult, but most of them agreed with my interpretation, or at least kind of respected it. I think the harder thing was really working with my kids, or my son, specifically my older son, and asking him if he felt there was something uncomfortable in there, because I didn't want it to harm our relationship. And so I gave him a copy of the book to read as well, and told him, okay, I'm publishing this, I'm doing it. So it wasn't a question of if I should publish. I still said I'm publishing. But read it. Tell me if there's something that makes you uncomfortable, and we'll talk about it and see if there needs to be any changes, because I didn't want to sacrifice, my relationship with my children. For other characters that I have more difficult, complicated relationships, such as my mother, who's still alive. My father is not alive anymore. That was harder because I didn't really want to ask permission. And at the same time, I had to be upfront and say, this is what I'm doing. And I also gave her a copy to read. And we had to have a long talk about, how this is my story, and I am going to share it. And I know that she's not going to be happy about some things in the book. And I respect that. I understand. And at the same time, this is my truth. And this is what I intend to share with the world, and that we can hold those two things at the same time. And somehow it worked out. People appreciated being consulted, at least, and were okay with me releasing the book. They might not have been happy about it, but it sort of worked out in a way. And it's also a door to open discussions about things that happens, and things that I write about.
Absolutely. Well, it's a whole other layer of courage to do that, and the objectivity, everything you've described there, I understand, obviously, from doing this kind of thing, and it really is an art form in and of itself. So, well done to you. Now, for people, obviously, who want to read it, I have another one here. When people come up to you, or when they have read the book, you mentioned earlier that strangers, it's sort of easier than the people who know you. But in terms of specifically anyone now, when they come up to you, are there moments, specific moments in the book where they mention, oh my gosh, did that really happen? Or, how did that happen? How did you get through that? And what I would like to do here is I would like to share maybe one or two stories from it without giving too much away, because people need to hear that as well. And I'm just curious, if I'm in your shoes for a moment, which aspect they come up and they say, my gosh, like that's like something from a movie. I mean, did that really go on? That kind of thing would be very interesting to hear your take on that, please, Rachel. Thank you.
So the first, the book opens really without giving it away. The book opens in the first chapter with the big life-changing moment that happened, which is very unrealistic and sounds like it's from a movie, like you said, where was living in a very upper middle class neighborhood in a very strict religious community. And my father was a rabbi and well known in the community, and we get a call that he was arrested and was in prison one day out of the blue. And the next day we find out what the charges were, and that he was arrested for selling heroin to a police officer, to an undercover police officer. So that's pretty shocking. I think most people figure arrest, oh my gosh, that's bad, but it's not unbelievable. People get arrested for things all the time. They're usually, if I would say what would be more appropriate, not that being arrested is ever appropriate, but what would be more appropriate would be maybe like, fraud or laundering money or, some kind of white collar crime. But drugs, and especially of all drugs, heroin, was completely not in our vocabulary. just nothing we knew about. And so it was completely unbelievable and definitely caused a lot of chaos in our family's life. But not only that, it really ripped the Jewish community apart in a way, because he represented certain synagogues, and people didn't want to be associated, and there was a lot of backlash in terms of the community. First it was gossip, and then it was, outright kind of, I would say, like shunning in a way, being shunned by the community, being blacklisted in a way. And even though I didn't do anything, what did I do? I was just a kid. But we were somehow blamed, and that was interesting, or we suffered for his crimes. So that's one major story in the book that is unbelievable. And as the years went by, I tried to make some sense of it, try to understand what he was thinking, try to understand what was going on, how he even got to that place. I still sometimes just wonder, because the answers didn't really come. I had to try to figure it out as best I could. I didn't get any straight answers from anybody. So that was pretty unreal and devastating. And I believe it's what really shook my life to the point of having me question all of my beliefs. So that's one major story that really happened. A second one, that's the main story. The other stories that happened were more within the family. A lot of movement, like I moved from Montreal to San Diego, and left my religion, and I kind of broke out and broke free in a way that was, I really wanted to experience everything that life had to offer that I couldn't experience before. So there are a lot of fun stories, like a trip to Mexico, and I, did some crazy things. And, I had grown up in a very sheltered environment, so I didn't have a chance to be a crazy teenager. I was actually quite a good teenager, very obedient. And all of a sudden, at the age of 27, when I kind of broke out, the whole world was open, and there were many things that I just wanted to taste, different adventures, different experiences. And so I write about that a lot in the book, kind of the wilder side, which took place more in the days in California. So there are a lot of stories in the book that are interesting, but the most shocking one, I think, is the sentence that my father had, and then really what ensued. And I think one other thing that might be a bit unbelievable is some of the stuff that went on in my family, just the basic stuff that went on in our day-to-day life. To me, at the time, it was fairly normal. It was what I knew, the way my parents spoke to me, the things they said to me. And when I look back on it now that I'm a mom, and my kids are growing up, and I'm older now, a little wiser. I can't believe some of the things that went on, some of the things that were said, some of the ways that we were treated or disciplined was, in my opinion, really bizarre and unkind. So, yeah, I think that those are some of the things that are somewhat shocking. And again, it's not a story of, very extreme abuse or any kind of physical, suffering that went on. But it's subtle messages that were under the surface that really shaped my belief system. And it took many, many years to undo those beliefs. And I believe a lot of people carry those same beliefs, especially the not good enough, not being not good enough, that people can't really see you, that they don't know you, that you're alone, feeling guilty, feeling shame. All of those things are common things that we all feel for whatever reason. And when you start to dig into, it's sometimes not the biggest things, not the big traumas or tragedies that happen, but all these little messages we get when we're growing up, or that we're not important, or we don't matter, or that you're alone. So many things that really make people sad and feel isolated are results of things other people said or did that they weren't even thinking at the time. They weren't even, wishing to harm anyone. But what I want to say is that these messages matter. That we need to discover what they are, what we're believing about ourselves, about others, about the world, about our place in the world, and at least be open to there being a new possibility. It doesn't have to be the story that's running in your head right now. There is a way out.
I love that message, Rachel. That is incredibly powerful. What you shared, all of that entire story, but the way you summed that up at the end, the stories that we tell ourselves, that is absolutely essential wisdom. I also wanted to ask you as we move into the last sort of few things here with this, in terms of your journey of finding peace within yourself, if you like, following on from what you said there about, not feeling enough and learning to be enough and the freedom and all of these things. Obviously, this whole process, this whole book is about finding the peace, but also has putting it out there like this given you more inner peace, if you like, or more um, calm or contentment or that type of thing within yourself in terms of your own healing now? If I had to say sort of how you felt before it was out there and how you feel now that it is out there, what the difference is between the sort of before and after, would be interesting
Well,
to
it's an
touch on.
interesting question. I would say that I wouldn't have felt complete if I didn't do it because I always wrote, I started it, and it felt like it needed to be told. And during the process of it, I do believe I processed a lot of difficult feelings, and there were days where I wrote, and then I would just go to sleep for a few hours afterwards because I couldn't even. It was so much to hold. It was so exhausting in a way to bring up all the old stuff. And just going through that process helped me shed layer by layer, I hope. Not that it ever goes away, there's always work to be done. But there is something lighter about having published the book and saying, okay, I told the story the best way I could, the way I wanted to, and the way that I think it can help the most people. And now I can sort of put that away and just be me. Because it was always about healing. It was always about fixing something. I always had some other mountain to climb, I think. And the fact that I wrote the book, which is probably the biggest mountain I've ever climbed, the biggest hurdle I've ever crossed. Now there is something that's more quiet inside. I also don't feel that I'm hiding anymore, or I know that I've been honest and true to my story. And I do feel I can move on, and that I don't have to let that define me anymore. There's that piece as well.
Absolutely, that is beautiful because, well, I'm happy that there's a couple of things that I've mentioned that, like with the first question I asked, and you said, "Oh, nobody's asked me that," and I thought, "Ah, there we go." I try and, a part of my personal fun with the whole thing, as well as sharing people's stories and everything. I make it a challenge to myself to get at least one question in where somebody says, oh, nobody's asking that. And you said it for the first one. I thought, oh, there we go. But no, seriously, all I'm doing is nothing special. I'm just actually trying to put myself in your shoes a little bit and picture things from that point of view. So it's just empathy really. And that was the same thing. I was just thinking, how would I feel in if some of these things were happening, So there we are. Okay. So as we move into the latter phase of this, Rachel, in terms of the future plans with the book, and it's been released this year, it's out there. Can we map the impact forward in some way, in the sense that it's sort of quite a new achievement in that sense, and it's going very, very well. But if we imagine for a moment we were having this conversation, say a year from now or some such and such period of time, where would you hope that things would be by then in one way or another? I don't have a very specific aspect in mind, but just in general, your future hopes and plans with all of this would be fascinating to hear as well, please.
Well, I think that what my hope is, or I hope to be heading, and I am doing it already, I'm leading retreats. I just led a week long retreat in Thailand in October, so very recently. And there'll be another retreat in Greece this summer. And in my retreats, for most of my career, I would say, for the last 20, 25 years or so, my focus has been on combining physical therapy or physiotherapy and back pain and yoga. So, kind of fixing the body through yoga, but more through the physical lens. That has been my focus and kind of developing this expertise on different techniques for back pain. But as I do that and as I work with clients, I know that a lot of pain is not physical. Some of it is from physical causes, and a lot of it is often from emotional causes. So what I hope to do is really bridge these books that I've written, kind of the big books on yoga for back pain and this memoir, which very much speaks to how yoga heals, because yoga works with the physical body, the breath, awareness practices, but also very much and more so is aimed at calming the fluctuations of the mind. And so what I hope to do is really offer workshops and retreats and trainings that bridge the physical and the emotional, that bring together causes of pain, physical pain and emotional pain, and just shows the connection of the mind and the body better. So I hope to teach more about that. I also became a psychotherapist over the last 20 years. So I'm a physical therapist, but I'm a psychotherapist as well because of this, because I wanted to really feel that I got a good training in terms of counseling people and understanding how the mind works and understanding the effect that our thoughts and our beliefs have on our bodies. And so that's where I want to take this. I believe I just want to bridge that gap between the mind and the body.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, actually, and it sounds wonderful because people don't, or people understand a lot more. There's a lot more awareness, but the understanding is still developing of the connection between mind, body, and spirit, if you like, not to sound cliche, but that's what it is. And it's wonderful. And the reason I asked you that question is again, there's sort of a before and after. There's a transformative effect now that the book is out there on your work as well. So that sounds absolutely wonderful, and I really hope that that continues and expands because people need to know those sorts of connections. Okay, and the last question I have for you, Rachel, is a very easy one. If people want to connect with you, buy the book, obviously, but connect with you about retreats and speak with you on social media, I know that you're very accessible for relevant requests. I will put that in there, but you are very accessible and down to earth. Nonetheless, even though you're a famous author now, you keep it down to earth very, very well. So may we just discuss how people can reach out to you? You're not exactly hard to find, but some people are hearing this for the first time, so we just need to mention that.
Sure. So one very easy way is to go to my website, which is happybackyoga.com. Pretty easy website, happybackyoga.com, and there is the information of my book, all of my books, some free courses that you can access online, which is great, videos and such, as well as information about my upcoming retreats. So everything is on happybackyoga.com. And I also have a personal website, rachelkrentzman.com, that leads you straight to all the ways you can access the book and has a little bit about my retreats there as well. And I'm on all major platforms under my name. You can find me pretty easily, Rachel Krentzman.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I hope that people do because some people will listen to this story and they'll get the entertainment and the lessons that way. But I'm sure some people will feel that pull of thinking, hey, I like Rachel's vibe. Let's reach out. Let's see what we can do together. So I hope they will. And absolutely, please, before we go, Rachel, show us the book one more time.
Yeah.
I saw you handling it, but there it is,
There's
as
my
it.
book as is. It's a very vulnerable cover. It is me on the cover. Um, and I think the title speaks for itself.
It does. It absolutely does. Well, there we are. It's a wonderful little talk that we had today, and I hope that this puts some more eyes on the book and on you and the wonderful work that you're doing that the world so desperately needs in this day and age. I wish you every success with your retreats, Rachel. If you ever come to Cyprus, by the way, let me know. I'm in Cyprus. We're neighbors, you see.
Yeah, we're
Actually,
so close.
technically speaking, we are quite close. So I would love to maybe meet you in person. But I wish you every success
Thank
with
you.
everything that you're doing. Thank you so much for your time and your presence, and thank you for being an open book, let's say, about all of these things. I appreciate that. All right then. Well, you have a lovely, restful evening, and I'll send you this, by the way, when I release it as well, and we'll go from there. But thank you again
Okay,
very, very
thank
much.
you. Thank you very much. Good
Thank you.
night.
Take
Bye
good
bye.
night. Take care. Bye bye. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.